My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
And my name is Dr. What, and I'm a total nerd, but you wouldn't know it if you met me. My expertise is in mathematics, history, of course medicine, and all things nerddom.
Our mission is to bring nerd culture to the masses
by putting it all under the microscope. Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, TV, mega comic books, or is that graphic novels, cartoons, groups, that's animation, Disney, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Digimon, and Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Nintendo, Cinematic Universes, Marvel, DC, Justice League, is Batman, leads with Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Avengers, Iron Man, Captain Jaws, Loki, Spider-Man, and Hulk, and Logan, X-Men, Battlers, Alien, Galaxy, Guardians, Star Trek, Prick, Picard, and Janeway, Nerds and Geeks from gather around and join them in the Big Fat Shark.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd culture under the microscope.
The microscope indeed.
I got to start this episode, Dr. What, with a shout out to my roommate, Professor F.
Oh, yeah?
He was in Toronto last week.
Okay.
And he happened across the set of Titans.
Really?
I'm sure you've heard of this. It's like
I watched the first season.
Yeah, in Canada it's a Netflix show,
yeah.
But on the States it airs on this DC Universe streaming service that we can't get here. It's been a year. DC, get your act together.
But if you can see the show on Netflix, what does it matter?
Well, it matters because there's other shows on Disney or DC Universe that I want to see, and the licensing rights for those different shows kind of go to different places. So, like, the new season of Young Justice is airing on Teletoon here.
Okay.
Doom Patrol is on the Space Channel.
Ah.
And in the States, it's all on DC Universe. One place. And I had a glorious 2-week period earlier this year where I was in the States and was able to consume it all. Anyway, he happened across the set.
Yeah.
And they were filming a shot with Beast Boy, who in Titans has like green hair, so he's pretty easy to spot.
Right.
And he took a picture, sent it to me, and he's like, "Hey, is this that show Titans?" And I was like very impressed because he'd only like seen me watch it like a couple of times as he was passing through, and he was able to identify the show. And I attribute that to my encouraging him in nerd culture. If he wasn't living with me, he would not have known that was Beast Boy.
Well, you know what? Us doing this podcast and me being involved with it, TC Laugh and I, so of course we're married, we're living together, and we have a new child. I don't have a comic book name for him yet. We're working on it. Anyways, we've had some downtime. This podcast has encouraged TC Laugh and I to start watching some more comic book movies together. TC Laugh is actually really into the MCU, and the fact that we've basically been banging our way through a bunch of these movies. So we watched The Avengers, we watched Captain America, we watched Guardians of the Galaxy, we watched Ant-Man, watched a bunch of these movies.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so she's actually really into it now. So kudos,
Good
my
job.
friend. You are doing it by getting the word out there, and we're actually starting to get other people involved in nerd culture who might not otherwise be.
Speaking of which, it's time for a public service announcement.
Okay, then. The more you know.
So earlier today, it was announced that Spider-Man Far From Home was going to get a re-release in theaters over the Labor Day weekend. There was going to be an additional 4 minutes, and I was all excited to go see the movie because it's already the highest-grossing film that Sony's ever produced, and as we've talked on the show before, the likelihood of Marvel and Sony continuing to collaborate was contingent on Far From Home making over $1 billion, which it has indeed done.
Wow, it made over $1 billion?
It made over $1 billion. It's now, like I said, the highest grossing movie worldwide that Sony's ever had.
Wow. How much did Endgame make as compared to Spider-Man Far From Home?
Far From Home, at the time of our recording, has made $1,109,905,159.
Wow.
Avengers Endgame is currently the highest grossing film of all time, sitting at $2,795,931,965.
Okay. When I heard $1 billion, I thought, holy crap, that's a lot of money. But I didn't realize that Endgame had made just that much more money. Okay.
Yeah, no, actually, with its box office gross, Far From Home is actually the 4th highest grossing film of the year. The Lion King and Captain Marvel have made more than it. There's actually been 6 movies to gross over $1 billion this year, because Aladdin and Toy Story 4 have grossed over $1 billion as well.
Really?
Anyway, this is the public service announcement. If this had been 5 hours ago, I would have been telling everyone to go to the theaters and watch this re-release of Far From Home, to bolster future potential interest in Sony Marvel working together.
Yeah.
But now we have news that the talks have indeed broken down, and that Sony is convinced that they can continue producing Spider-Man movies without the involvement of Marvel Studios.
That's just a bad idea.
When they made the original deal in 2015, Sony and Marvel agreed to a split of the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel currently owns the merchandising rights to Spider-Man. So any T-shirts or action figures or whatever that gets made for the movie, Marvel already gets the revenue for. So all Sony gets is the box office revenue, like the money the actual movie generates through ticket sales.
Mm-hmm.
So they agreed to a 95%, 5% split in the initial deal.
Oh, okay. So Marvel would just get 5% of the box office revenues. Is that right?
Yeah. So
okay.
For the Sony produced movies.
Yeah.
So they made the arrangement for him to be in 5 films.
But Captain America: Civil War, Marvel gets 100% of that?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So the 3 MCU movies that Spider-Man was in, Marvel kept all the revenue for those.
Right.
And then for the 2 Sony produced MCU movies,
Mm-hmm.
Sony got 95%, Marvel got 5%.
Okay.
And I guess at the time, Marvel was so desperate to get Spider-Man in there that they were willing to agree to that kind of arrangement.
Right.
And so the hope was that, as we talked about in the Far From Home episode, that as this deal is coming to an end, Sony would see how collaborating with Marvel has actually been a benefit to them.
Mm-hmm.
And Far From Home is now, like I said, their highest grossing film ever as a studio.
Yeah.
But it was announced at like 4 o'clock today that indeed the talks have broken down. Apparently, Disney/Marvel came to the table and said they wanted to co-finance and co-produce the films 50%.
Sounds reasonable.
So Sony pays for 50% of the film, gets 50% of the revenue.
Yeah.
Marvel pays for 50% of the film, gets 50% of the revenue.
Yeah. Sony
said no.
Why?
Well, think about it. You went from making 95% of the revenue to then only 50.
Okay, but they...
I don't know. I think it's a dumb decision, too.
Yeah.
I would hope that the success of Homecoming and Far From Home would show them that actually it's in their best interest to, work with Marvel on this, because, they can continue making Tom Holland-led Spider-Man films, but the reason people are interested in seeing Spider-Man movies at this point is because they're connected to the MCU.
Absolutely. Now, Sony is only putting in 50% to finance the movie, right? You put 50% in, you get 50% out. That makes sense to me. That sounds like a good deal. You still get money out the end of this. It just may not be as... It's just greed. It's not as much as you would have liked to otherwise. And you know who suffers is us. And actually them at the end of the day, because they're not going to be making as much money on the deal.
Exactly. And
I don't think that Sony can produce as good of a movie by themselves as if it were partnered with the MCU.
I mean, they need to have that connection. They did Into the Spider-Verse on their own.
Okay, point taken. That is actually one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time. But I think that's not indicative of the rest of what they're going to be putting out. That is a bit of a red herring.
Yeah, so if they were to come out and say, oh, the producers of Into the Spider-Verse are going to work on the next Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, I think I'd be okay with it. Because as we discussed, the story of Far From Home kind of ends in a place that it would allow for Spider-Man to be in his own little contained story.
Yeah.
And not be as related to the other films.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. Public service announcement. Do not go see the re-release of Spider-Man Far From Home. We need to show Sony with our dollars that this is not what we want. Right, Dr. What?
Wait. Why not seeing it? Why is that a bad thing?
Not seeing it is a good thing.
Why is not seeing it a good thing? Why is seeing it a bad thing?
Seeing it's a bad thing because you're continuing to give Sony your money and you're basically bolstering their confidence that they can make their movies without the help of Marvel.
Okay, yeah,
I made the mistake of paying to go see Venom. And Venom made a lot of money, and between the financial success of Venom and the critical success of Into the Spider-Verse, Sony feels all like as if they can just make Spider-Man movies on their own, as if they don't need Marvel's help.
They're very prideful.
So everyone listening, do not go see the re-release of Spider-Man Far From Home.
Agreed.
Because hopefully, this isn't final. They could come back to the table. My hope is that there's such a public outcry of fans and dedicated moviegoers, voicing their anger and frustration at Sony that they'll have no choice but to renege on their decision. Don't go see the re-release of Far From Home. Do anything else Labor Day weekend. Let's show Sony with our dollars that we want a future of Spider-Man movies with the MCU.
Yeah, go and become a Godfather or something like that on Labor Day weekend. Average Joe is going to become a godfather to TC Laughs and my son. So, very excited about that. Big day for us. Average Joe, I'm excited.
That's good. I'm
Yeah.
happy you're excited.
Be there for the baptism. Don't go watch a silly movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so it isn't a baptism? I thought I was like indoctrinating him into the Batman fandom.
With all due respect, I think which family he's joining is a little bit more important.
Yeah, that's fair. That was my attempt to segue into today's conversation.
Yes, the Bat family, because there's a big Bat family.
Yes, so this episode is being recorded ahead of time because when we would normally record, I'm going to be attending Fan Expo Canada, which is being held in Toronto, Ontario. So while you guys are listening to this, I will have just returned from Fan Expo, probably with having spent more money than I should have and being exhausted.
Woo!
It didn't really give us a lot of lead time to research a topic, so Dr. What came with a great idea of kind of doing a sequel to another recent episode we did.
And I'm very excited about this episode because if there's any topic that Average Joe knows a lot of and he can speak off the cuff about, it's Batman movies. So I'm excited. This is going to be a good one.
Yes, so today, I guess as a spiritual sequel to the episode we just did, ranking the movie Spider-Man, we are going to be ranking the movie Batman today.
Excellent.
Now, I was having dinner with my parents before this.
Really?
And my dad, they're in town
I missed them.
for a conference.
Darn.
I mentioned to him we were going to be recording this episode, and he made a point of asking two really good questions. He said, are you ranking the actors who played Batman or the Batman the actors portrayed?
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, are we going the A-type route of ranking the performances by the actors?
Yeah.
Or are we going the B-type of asking how the actor portrayed the character?
Yeah.
So not necessarily ranking the actors who were Batman, but how Batman were the actors.
Yes. Yeah.
So the way I kind of entered the thought process for this is similar to the Spider-Man one, is asking, it's like a combination of both. It's like, how much did I enjoy the different portrayals? How much did I appreciate the level of acting involved? And how well does this character represent Batman to me?
Right.
Is that similar to what your thought process was in ranking them?
In ranking them, I had a very simplified sort of homogenization of those three criteria. Now, admittedly, it would be much more interesting if I'd divided it up into those three categories. But in my mind, I just looked at the enjoyment overall quality of that film when I watched.
And as we're going to discuss, Batman's actually a very interesting character in that in his 80 years of existence, he's gone through very different iterations.
Oh, yeah.
Like the character has changed through the decades, and so you can have, as we'll discuss, versions of the character that are totally different from the other. And you have to understand that these characters represent different eras of Batman storytelling. So there's not like there's a version of Batman that everyone associates with. It's usually the one they were first introduced to.
Yep.
So it's hard to just say, oh, this one's bad, this one's good, because every Batman is someone's Batman.
For me, it doesn't work that way, but we'll get into that in rankings.
Okay. So we're using the classic Batjar system. We took my rankings, Dr. What's rankings, and Ben the Movie Buff's ratings. And there are 10 actors who have played Batman in a movie. And so we basically ranked them 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst. And we added up all the scores across all three judges. And so we have the total ranking, the total score, the Batjar ranking we're going to go through today. Are you ready, Dr. What?
I'm very ready for this. Is this a big episode? This seems like it's going to be a big episode.
Who knows? We'll find out.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
And just for the record, Dr. What doesn't know the official rankings here.
I don't,
I've
no.
kept the sheet away from him.
I was responsible for 1/3 of the weighting to this, unless Average Joe's weighting counts for more, which...
No.
Let's be honest, it should. It should. You've watched these movies more than I have.
The whole point of this podcast is to illustrate how different people can come at the same topic, the same subject matter, the same film, and have different experiences. So I think all our experiences are valid.
Okay, all right.
And we'll get into that. So, there's 10 Batman actors, which means that the absolute worst score an actor could get is 30. The absolute best score an actor could get is 3.
3, yep.
And just as a reminder, as with the Spider-Man competition, we acknowledge that the actors are not alone. That behind them are costume designers, writers, directors, producers. A lot of people went into the different...
That's me opening a soda stream. Sorry there, guys.
There's a lot of people who went into crafting these different interpretations of Batman. So while we're kind of labeling them as the actor's version of Batman. I think Dr. Wood and I can both agree it's not just the actor who's responsible. It's the whole production team.
It's the whole production team, because you might have an excellent actor, but you could have a terrible script, you can have terrible costume, you could have terrible effects, and those things, guilt by association, that actor may not have the highest of rankings.
In 9th place, with 29 points, is Robert Lowry,
Okay.
who played Batman in the 1949 movie serial series Batman and Robin.
Good work. One of the Wizard's men has been picked up in a car a block from here.
Then the Wizard will be without transportation.
We still won't be able to see him.
Unless the invisibility wears off after a while. He'll need help. You might try to phone for it. Have the telephone company listening on every call from pay stations in this vicinity.
It's a big job.
I know it is, but there's a chance they might intercept a call from our invisible enemy.
Right. So this is one I didn't rank because I just didn't see this movie. So
Well, it's a movie serial.
a movie serial, yeah.
You're familiar with what a movie serial is?
Yeah, it's when they have a bunch of TV shows and then they just like lump them all together and make a movie out of it.
You're mostly right. So before TV was a thing, they would film what were called movie serials, and the idea is that they would air weekly in the movie theaters.
Oh, okay.
So kids would come back to the movie theaters every week to see the latest episode of the movie serials. So
That
this
actually
is
sounds more fun that way.
yeah, this was like in the 30s and the 40s before television was in homes. So they were designed to be like episodic, like 13 episode things, and every episode would end on a cliffhanger so that kids would be incentivized to come back the next week and see the next installment.
I think they should bring this concept back. I would, if it was a cheap ticket to get
It's called streaming shows.
No, but like streaming shows, it's not a communal thing. If I was going to a movie theater with my buds once a week, like, hey, Saturday night, let's go see Batman, I'd do that. That sounds like a great
Each chapter is
great
only
time.
like 15 minutes long. Would you
That's
want to go out to the theater just for 15 minutes?
Heck yeah, go out, 15-minute show, go grab a drink after. That sounds like fun.
All right, well, there you go. So
Let's bring it back.
So this was a movie serial, went on for like 13 chapters in 1949, and Robert Lowry was the actor who played Batman in this series.
Okay.
I, to this date, have not actually watched this,
Me neither.
so it's kind of like at the very bottom for me. I've seen photos
Okay.
about it, and I don't know anything else about it other than that.
Okay. Would you ever watch this movie serial?
Maybe, if it was purchased for me and I was forced to sit down and watch it with people. So yeah, at the end of the day, I just haven't watched this one, and it's never come across my path to. I think I saw the DVD once in a store, and it
You
just,
weren't tempted enough.
No,
No. Okay.
Despite my fandom of being a Batman fan, it just wasn't enough. So
Like I just even the curiosity of it being there. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
yeah, so both you and I put it as number 10, and then Ben the Movie Buff put it in 9th place. So it's got 29 points altogether.
Heck yeah.
So moving on to 8th place.
Okay.
With 27 points. Or sorry, 26 points.
Oh, not bad.
Not far off,
Yeah.
but still not last place.
Yeah.
Is Lewis Wilson
Nice.
from the 1943 Batman serial.
Now, that's all right, Alfred. Snap into it. They may be here any time.
Oh, yeah. But it's only 9 o'clock, sir.
I know, but they might be here ahead of time to catch us napping. Get ready to do your stuff. I'll be right outside to give you a hand in case of trouble.
Okay, so I didn't watch all of this movie, but I watched a little bit of it. And oh my gosh, is it terrible. It is awful. Batman, I think, is wearing a rug on his head. The bat ears are kind of floppy, and they introduce Batman in a cave sitting behind a wooden desk. Like, I'm going to go see my lawyer in his bat cave.
So this is one I actually watched as a kid. My parents somehow got like a VHS of this 1943 movie serial. I remember watching the episodes and not really understanding the story at all, but I could identify Batman and Robin and people they were fighting.
Yeah.
Interestingly, this is actually a piece of war propaganda because it was produced during the 1940s, during World War II, and so the evil villains of this are Japanese people.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah,
Is it racist?
Yeah.
Okay, because I used to watch Walt Disney war propaganda, like,
Yeah.
because I thought those were hilarious, to be honest, because they're fairly racist. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like it for the racism, but I like it for the actual hilarity of the comics.
Yeah, so at that point, Batman had been in the comics for almost 5 years, but instead of trying to draw upon any of the characters that had already been introduced for villains, they went with a kind of a war propaganda piece, which I'm sure helped finance the movie. So if you can look past that, what I enjoyed about it was just Batman doing a lot of fighting. You know, the prolific Batman writer Frank Miller,
Yeah.
who's had highs and lows in his career for sure, I heard him during a documentary talk about the serial, and he said Batman in this movie serial was just a tough guy, did a lot of stuff. Like, he was like constantly on the move and constantly going to the next thing.
Oh, really?
And it's true, if you watch one of those episodes, he goes from like punching out one guy, and it's not like he's one punching people, like knocking them out with one hit. It's like he's actually like struggling to defeat people, and then it's almost like an old video game where you go from like, you just kind of follow them as they go from like one level to the next, just knocking out a bunch of goons.
Yes, which is kind of cool, like an old Street Fighter, an old Golden Axe, if you remember that game.
So as a kid, I was able to follow along with it because it just was a lot of action, like a lot of people punching and sound effects, and
that's fun.
It's true, the costume looks ridiculous.
Yes,
it was
does.
one of the first appearances of the Batcave.
Yeah.
So it certainly doesn't look up to par.
It looks awful.
Yeah, for the time it was interesting, and yeah, I'm sure if I actually sat down and watched the 49 serial, it'd probably be a lot. I'd have a lot of the same comments about them just doing hard work and just punching and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't have any of the depth or complexity. You never really get into like who their characters are. It's just really just meant to be that kind of like TV show that kids would go and watch on Saturdays.
Yep.
And everything would kind of end with Batman in like a cliffhanger, kind of like falling off a cliff or something.
Yeah.
So, as much as I have like nostalgia for this 1943 movie serial, I think that was the other part of it too. Is that I just sort of watched it like back, like they'd edited together, so it just felt like one long movie.
Right. And it feels probably a little bit disjointed in that going from one scene to the next, and it just builds and then drops, builds and drops, builds and drops.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, Lewis, we got to put you near the bottom here.
That's fair.
You're a product of your time, and that's okay.
I heard that this movie wasn't even good for its time, though.
Perhaps we'd have to go back in time to determine that for sure.
That's true.
Oh my gosh! I just realized with the readjustment with the points, there's actually another tie.
Oh.
Because you know who else has 26 points?
Who's that?
Is George Clooney.
Okay.
George
All right.
Clooney from 1997's Batman and Robin.
$1 million.
$2 million.
You don't have it. $3 million.
I'll borrow it from you. $4 million.
$5 million.
That's a utility belt, not a money belt. $6 million.
$7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
I like George Clooney as an actor, but this is well deserved. How do you feel about it there, AJ?
Well, I'm just doing the math in my head now. So actually, Robert Lowry was in 8th place, and this means that both George Clooney and Lewis Wilson are tied for 7th place.
Okay.
And I think this says something about just the quality of Batman and Robin and his performance in it.
Yep.
The fact that, this was a film made almost 50 years later,
Mm-hmm.
and he's still rated by us as fans on the same level.
Yep.
Now, again, as a kid, I loved Batman and Robin. I didn't think too much about it. I was able to. He just seemed like Batman to me. He said Batman stuff. He looked like Batman.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, he doesn't strike me as Batman or like his Bruce Wayne. Sure, he's charismatic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I didn't feel any of the emotional angst.
Yeah. And George Clooney, I don't think can portray that emotional angst very well.
Well, he's done.
Well, he's a great actor, but when you see George Clooney, it doesn't evoke that emotional angst. Whereas Michael Keaton, surprisingly, was able to do it, even though he has that comedy background. Anyways, we're coming to Michael Keaton later.
Yeah, so again, I heard George Clooney in an interview about Batman and Robin, and he basically said something to the effect of, people aren't going to feel bad for this guy because his parents died. He's rich, he's got all these beautiful girlfriends, he's got all these gadgets, and he's Batman.
Yeah.
So the approach that he had with playing the character was like assuming that nobody would feel sorry for him. And so he just kind of like played it straight, played it confident.
Okay.
And I would disagree. I think part of the tragedy of Batman in any interpretation is that he is unable to move on, unable to process his trauma. And sure, like as we're going to discuss the other Batmen on this list who don't carry that angst,
Mm-hmm.
I guess George Clooney's performance kind of sticks out because it was during a time when we were more accustomed to Batmen who were more in touch with that side of the character.
Yeah, and then it just doesn't come across with...
I also know for a fact that when he was filming Batman and Robin, he was also on ER.
Oh, was he?
So he was like filming ER during the week, and then he would come in on the weekends and the evenings to do Batman. So
that's a little distracting.
So I can't help but wonder if like the blandness of his performance was impacted by the fact that he was working all the time.
Yeah.
Now, granted, other actors do something like that. Like Michael J. Fox did that with Back to the Future because he was on Family Ties.
Right.
But he was able to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And George Clooney, I don't think he made it work.
Not at all.
And again, I enjoy Batman and Robin, the 97 film, not the 49 serial, for its silliness. I embrace it.
Okay.
It is a throwback to older versions of Batman, but in terms of just George Clooney as Batman is kind of like one of the things in that movie that doesn't age well for me.
The silliness has not aged well for me. The silliness, you go back and you watch it and you kind of cringe. For me, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing I'll say is, as I said before, his Bruce Wayne is charming, but that's not enough to like weigh him above all the other performances.
Agreed. Yeah.
So we have in 6th place.
Okay, now it's going to get interesting.
Or wait, no, I guess this is 5th now. Oh boy, my numbers are going to be all over the place, but that's fine. Next we have I think it's 5th place now, with 18 points.
Oh, big jump.
Val Kilmer. In 1995's Batman Forever.
So I think we're now into the category of I enjoyed this.
So you're willing to take a life?
As long as it's Two-Face.
Then it will happen this way. You make the kill. But your pain doesn't die with Harvey, it grows. So you run out into the night to find another face. And another. And another. Until one terrible morning you wake up and realize that revenge has become your whole life. And you won't know why.
You can't understand. Your family wasn't killed by a maniac.
Yes, they were. We're the same.
Because I liked Batman Forever. I thought it was a great movie. I really enjoyed that movie. I thought Val Kilmer did an excellent job. Yeah, for me, he was not Batman per se, but at the time, actually, you know what? You talk about Batman is whoever you were first introduced to. This is the movie that I was first introduced to Batman as Batman, because the original Batman from 1989 with Michael Keaton, I was still too young to watch that movie. Okay, so I was only 5 years old when that movie came out. The next Batman movie with Michael Keaton and with Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito, that was a horror movie almost. So I wasn't allowed to watch that movie. So what year did Batman Forever come out?
95.
95. So I was in grade 5 when that came out. I could watch that movie. And actually, Val Kilmer for me was Batman. So I really like that movie. Even though it probably hasn't aged that well, I still like it.
We did a whole episode on the Joel Schumacher era Batman films.
Yeah.
And so in that episode,
Asian John.
Yeah, we kind of explained that the movies Batman Forever and then Batman and Robin were kind of reactions to how the Tim Burton films ended up.
Yeah, they were too dark and that type of thing. Yeah.
So naturally, the version of Batman that appears in this film is meant to be less dark and broody than the original. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Joel Schumacher, the director, actually wanted to do like a serious take with Batman. Like they had written a whole subplot into the movie about Bruce digging more into his origins and finding out this detail about his father's journal. And there's still a bit of it in the movie, but there's like deleted scenes you can go and watch, but there's a whole lot of extra content that delves into the complexity of his character and the psychology of Bruce Wayne that was left on the cutting room floor because they wanted to make the movie more family friendly. Mm-hmm. So I'm more forgiving of this version of Batman over the George Clooney one because he looks the part for one thing. He's tall, he's muscular. Like I can believe that this is a guy who could actually beat people up. Mm-hmm. With some of the other actors we'll talk about, I have to really suspend my disbelief to believe that this individual could actually have the physical prowess and capabilities of Batman.
Right.
But with Val Kilmer, I bought it.
But Val Kilmer, remind me, he's still blonde in that movie.
Yeah, so that's admittedly the only thing where it's like visually, it's like he doesn't fit the part because he's blonde instead of black hair. But
yeah,
as a kid, I didn't know the difference. He also wears glasses in the movie, which some of these other actors do as well. And anyway, all I have to say, if you look at his Bruce Wayne, he's kind of dull. Like
okay.
And
yeah, I'd agree. It's Iceman. Come on.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was just an intentional choice for them to try, because there's two ways you can play billionaire Bruce Wayne. You can be oh, look at me, I'm a rich guy.
A
And,
charismatic playboy type of thing, right?
or you can play the really aloof Bruce Wayne who seems like he doesn't have any idea what's going on, and he's just kind of like, oh, like what's going on here? And I would say that Val Kilmer's Bruce Wayne is more like that.
Okay.
When we get talking down to the more, I guess, authentic versions of Batman, there's really three sides to the character. You have Bruce Wayne when he's out in public and trying to put on this facade, this public mask, if you will, so that people would not think he was Batman.
Yeah.
Then you have Batman himself, so the mask, the literal mask he puts on, and the persona that represents who he wants to be as a crime fighter.
Right.
But then you have basically the character when he's not pretending to be anything.
Batman when he's with Alfred.
Yeah, so I would call this character Bruce.
Right.
It's not like this guy doesn't have DID and he's three different characters. I'm saying that Bruce is when the character can just be himself, and he doesn't have to pretend to be the rich playboy or the dark vigilante. He can just be himself. And in these movies, it usually means like these are the scenes where he's either in Wayne Manor with Alfred or he's in the Batcave.
Right.
Because those are really the only places where he can just be himself, unfortunately. And so I would say like Bruce in Batman Forever is actually quite good. There's a lot of great scenes with him and Alfred and talking about either his love life or his connection to Dick Grayson.
Okay.
Like there's that one scene I really like where he talks to Dick Grayson about how he shouldn't be going out, he shouldn't become a crime fighter. He's like, you're never gonna be satisfied. You're gonna make revenge your whole life.
And those are some of the most interesting parts of Batman because everything else is sort of a facade. When you have those moments of Bruce talking with Dick Grayson or Bruce talking with Alfred, you actually get a feel for the character, what he is actually saying, and not trying to decipher, is this a lie or not?
This is also the same Batman who has all the one-liners about getting drive-through and chicks digging the car, and so...
Oh, yeah.
Those are definitely a reflection of the desire to make it more family-friendly.
And more lighthearted. Yeah, because real Bruce Wayne would never say such things.
Yeah.
Probably not. He's not interested in drive-through.
Like, the best versions of Batman certainly have, like, a sense of humor about them, but the one-liners just kind of... I don't know, they kind of... As a kid, you laugh and think they're the funniest thing in the world, but then as an adult, you're
true.
like...
Falls flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a kid, I can see how that was really, really funny.
We didn't mention this with Clooney either, but the Batsuit has nipples on it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there's a reason behind those.
Yeah, so go ahead and mention it for the people.
So the reason behind the Batsuits having nipples is that my understanding is that Joel Schumacher wanted to create sort of a Greek god type of aesthetic. And so Greek sculptures of the Greek gods had nipples, of course. And so he sculpted it out to kind of look that way, to kind of give them this otherworldly appearance. But it just looks weird to have nipples on rubber suits.
Yeah, I remember seeing a joke on the news at the time saying, it must have gotten cold in the Batcave. I don't think that's really a mark on the character or the performance or the version of Batman, because honestly, the Batman Forever suit is black, so you don't really notice it unless it's lit a certain way.
You have to look closely. I know.
So
yeah. Speaking about Batman Forever, I am drinking out of a Riddler mug from McDonald's from the Batman Forever movie. This is the exact same type of mug that I grew up drinking out of. It was one of my favorite mugs to drink out of when I was growing up. So when I saw it in your cupboard, I got very excited there, AJ.
Well, unfortunately, that mug doesn't help Val Kilmer. He's still in 6th place with 18 points. So,
but that movie was kind of stacked if you think about it. Like it had...
But we're talking about Batman.
Batman,
the representation of Batman.
Okay. Fair enough.
Unfortunately, like a lot of these movies, the villains kind of overtake the movie, and Batman's like a second banana to the villains.
Well, yeah, you have Tommy Lee Jones, you have Jim Carrey. Yeah, he's second banana.
And he's... I think I've heard people call Val Kilmer's Batman forgettable in the sense that he's just sort of there.
I would wholeheartedly agree. I remember other people's performances, not Val Kilmer's.
Also, he's known for having his mouth open. Like, if you look at a lot of the shots when he's wearing in his batsuit, his like mouth's just like hanging open.
Well, he has the fish lips thing going on.
Yeah.
Is that the same movie where Tommy Lee Jones drops Iceman into the Hudson River as they crash into the Statue of Liberty, except not Statue of Liberty?
Exactly.
The one that has the Gotham around the...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so moving on. In 5th place, with 15 points, not far off, we have Ben Affleck.
Well-deserved.
From 2016's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Suicide Squad, and then 2017's Justice League.
Okay, Suicide Squad, wasn't he
He was in like one scene.
One scene.
But he was there.
He was there. Okay.
You got a team here.
Superman can bring this team together better than I ever could. His strength
Doesn't matter how strong you are or what abilities you might
He's
have.
more human than I am. He lived in this world. Fell in love, got a job. Despite all that power, the world needs Superman. And the team needs Clark.
I think I actually ranked him a little bit lower than Val Kilmer, did I not?
Yes.
Yes, I did. Okay. Anyways, go ahead. You're going to say. I'm talking a lot here.
That's okay. So I actually put Ben Affleck near the top.
Oh,
which I know
really?
is a controversial opinion for
Very much
a lot
so.
of people.
I mean, if you like well, okay, he's a good actor. But go on. Move on. Yeah.
This DCEU version of Batman is one of the only ones in this list who has the opportunity to be part of the rest of the DC universe.
Yes.
And the other ones that we talk about, we'll mention them when we talk about them. But all to say, this is really the only live-action version of Batman that gets to interact with other DC Comics characters. So this is really one of the only expressions of Batman in film we have where he's actually, as he is in the comics, a part of a larger universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to see Batman really out of his element a couple times here when he's fighting people who have superpowers or
Yes.
aliens or creatures that are really above his pay grade.
Yep.
So just from a storytelling perspective, I find that interesting. I think the biggest issue people have with the Batfleck, as he's referred to, is that his character kills people. In Batman v Superman, he's pretty nonchalant about murdering criminals.
Yeah.
Which a lot of Batman
And
fans...
he uses a gun in that movie too, doesn't he?
Well, it's a grappling gun.
Okay.
But he does use like some kind of like long kind of rifle-y gun to shoot a grappling hook down.
Oh, okay. I thought he was actually like...
He has
taking off
guns on the
people's-
Batmobile that he uses to mow down criminals.
Okay. Like in that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, but in other iterations of Batman, my understanding he's like never using guns, especially in Batman the Animated Series. He's always like never using guns, and I think in Batman Beyond, there's a point of that in that story. Sorry, we're kind of getting off track here, but in that story, he's getting too old, and somebody's about to have to jump on him, and he picks up a gun and points it at the person. The person's like, "You'd never shoot me," But anyways, the fact that Batman resorted to a gun kind of like destroys his career in his mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy. I mean, the earliest Batman comics showed him using a gun.
Oh, really?
But most iterations of Batman are pretty anti-gun or anti-killing people, and we'll get into some of those other versions.
What does the NRA think of Batman?
I don't know, but point is, I would normally, like other versions of Batman that we'll talk about, I would be upset with him killing off criminals, except I feel as though Zack Snyder and company did a good enough job explaining how he got to that place or why he was at that place. That he was basically so disillusioned that he didn't care anymore.
Yep, he's jaded. Yep.
And I thought that was an interesting take on the character because up until that point, that wasn't something we'd seen in film yet.
Yeah.
Ideally, if you were building like a cinematic universe of all the DC heroes coming together, you wouldn't put like this old kind of jaded Batman into the mix. You'd want a Batman who's younger and kind of age up with the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of saddled him into the old veteran role for like the Justice League movie, which, again, it's a unique take. It's not the take I would have taken, but I was okay with Batfleck killing people because I felt the story had done enough to kind of explain why he was
why
doing
he
that.
got that. See, for me, it felt too jarring to see like when that opening scenes when he's like branding people. That to me was a little bit too much, and it didn't seem like Batman to me. And so, yes, they did explain it, but to me, I thought, no, this doesn't seem true to Batman. So that's why I ranked him a little bit lower. It's just too jarring.
You mentioned Batman Beyond. That's a good example of a story where Bruce Wayne gets old and jaded and becomes the most... Yeah, that one, he doesn't end up killing people, but he gets to a point where he's basically broken down and he's lost faith in the system, and it takes like a new Batman coming in to kind of help him get back on track.
Yeah. But there's all that other story that... what came before it, though, I don't know. Anyways, I couldn't buy the story behind it, and yeah, the overall quality of those movies actually affected, I think, my enjoyment of Batfleck. Unfortunately, I think everybody agrees that Ben Affleck is an excellent actor, and he did a very true to Batman acting job. So I think that is redemptive, but I think overall, because he's, as we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, there's like, costume, there's special effects and all those things, which arguably were some of the costume for Ben Affleck was actually one of the best ones. Like the robot Batman, like that's pretty freaking awesome.
Oh, to the fact that it's actually a black and gray suit, not just Batman wearing all black.
Yeah.
And like, frankly, when he's Batman, he fights like Batman. Like was able to believe that Ben Affleck could beat a whole room of goons up like Batman would.
Yeah.
And there's that great warehouse scene in BVS where he knocks out like a whole 20 guys, and some of his blows are lethal, but again, it's because he's at this state as a character,
and he just doesn't care anymore.
And I'm happy, like the arc that he went on through BVS and then Justice League. You don't see him kill a single person in Justice League, and it's suggested that his experience with Superman has helped inspire him to be a better version of himself.
Yeah, where he says he's an alien, but he's more human than I am. Yeah.
So I'm a defender of Batfleck.
Yeah, still low on my list, but that's okay. Agree to disagree.
So we're now at 4th place, where we have our second tie.
Oh, okay.
Tied with 13 points.
Yeah.
Are Will Arnett.
Sometimes losing people is part of life, but that doesn't mean you stop letting them in. Some very wise people taught me that. My father figure. My platonic co-worker buddy, who's a girl but just a friend. And you. Mi hijo. It's Spanish for son. This is my family, but it's your family too.
And Michael Keaton.
Don't kill me, man! Don't kill me! Don't kill me, man!
I'm not going to kill you. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Interesting, 2 very different takes. So I think it's not fair to say one's better than the other because they're 2 very different Batmans.
Well, so here's the thing. We just talked all that stuff about Batfleck killing people.
Yeah.
The Michael Keaton Batman unceremoniously kills people in both his movies. And there's like the one moment in Batman Returns where he sticks a bomb to a clown's stomach, looks at him and smiles, and then pushes him down a hole where he then explodes. And he just walks away as if it's no big deal.
Yep, that's pretty gruesome.
And he both the Batmobile and his plane have guns on them. Like he's mowing down criminals. And they never really give you any indication as to why his character does those things. It's just implied that's part of... And my dad made a point of saying, like, we have to remember when that film came out, the most recent version of Batman was Adam West.
Right.
Who was a very different take. So
yes.
They had to kind of go, I guess, a little too far the other way to counteract the impression people had. And it was the 80s. There was movies like Terminator, RoboCop, where...
There's a lot more shooting and everything. It doesn't seem... You know what? It doesn't seem out of place for him.
For who? For Michael Keaton?
For Michael Keaton, yeah. When you think about, like, when I think back to that movie, I'm like, yeah, I guess Batman did kill people, but now looking back on it, that doesn't feel true to character. That doesn't feel right.
Well, that's the thing. So, like, my impression of Batman is that he is indeed a character who has a moral compass and has, like, a line he won't cross when it comes to killing criminals.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the Michael Keaton version crosses that line with seemingly no remorse.
And not explained. And I think... For that reason, I think I would agree with you for putting Ben Affleck ahead of Michael Keaton. Now, you also said, I remember in one of your previous episodes a long time ago, for your dad and for your mom, Michael Keaton is Batman.
Yeah,
he's definitive Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And granted, there are elements of his performance that are very iconic to Batman. The fact that he has this looming presence and he's in the shadows and, he seems very reserved and kind of, he plays more like the aloof Bruce Wayne, as I mentioned, where he seems like disinterested in everything in his personal life. And you kind of can't... In this version, it's interesting because you can't tell if he's genuinely disinterested in everything in his life that is not Batman related, or if he's putting on an act.
Right.
Because if there's that scene at the beginning of Batman Returns where he's just sitting in his study, and it's dark. There's no lights on in the room, and he seems like he's just sitting there waiting for something to happen, as if like his life has no meaning without the Batman. Yeah. And then the bat signal comes on, and they'd have those stupid mirrors showing it into his study. And all of a sudden, he like steps up, and he's alive, and he starts walking towards the light. And I think it's an interesting take on the character to show a Bruce Wayne who is so consumed with the mission, I suppose,
Right.
that he feels like he has nothing else going on in his life.
That's an interesting take. I like that.
It's certainly the most melancholic version of Batman we've seen, the most introspective, the most quiet. And apparently Michael Keaton was actually very much opposed to Batman having a lot of lines. He actually would be like, this line should be cut, this line should be cut.
Really?
Because he felt Batman worked better as like a silent figure.
And I think Batman works best when he's in the shadows.
Yeah, most of the best Batman stories out there are unfortunately ones where the villains are the protagonist and Batman's kind of their antagonist.
Yeah.
So the story is mostly told from the villain's point of view, and then he just sort of comes in and disrupts their mission. So
right.
And that is one thing I'll praise the Tim Burton movies for, is that it certainly works that way. You feel like you know the villains just as well, if not better, than Batman.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate movies where the villain, you know them better than the protagonist. To kind of go off topic, Infinity War. I thought that was an excellent movie, and I felt that was a movie about Thanos. It was not a movie about anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Michael Keaton's Batman presents an interesting version of the character wherein it's one of the rare occasions in Batman's history where he actually finds his parents' killer and essentially gets revenge by making sure this parents' killer is killed off.
Now, okay, go ahead.
And we're supposed to believe that
it was the Joker.
That it was the Joker.
I know, that hurts.
But that's a whole other story. But to say that this Batman is the one that continues on into the Schumacher movies.
Mm-hmm.
So we're supposed to believe the Bruce Wayne in Batman Forever who's warning Dick Grayson about revenge, and then the Bruce Wayne in Batman and Robin who's totally fine with everything is also the same Batman who was nonchalantly killing people.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm supposed to believe this is the starting point of that character, it's not a believable arc. If I buy that the two Tim Burton movies is just their own thing, then sure. I could buy it as like this very dark, melancholic, brooding, kind of like Dirty Harry version of Batman.
Yeah.
It comes down to the physicality. Michael Keaton is 5'9". He doesn't like they had to sculpt muscles into the costume to like make up for the fact that he's a great actor. He just doesn't look like a guy who could actually have the physicality and the presence of Batman.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I've said this before. He had 2 stunt doubles, a fighting double, and a ballet dancer who wore the suit anytime that it involved swishing of the cape.
Oh, really?
So unless he was talking, he wasn't in the Batman costume.
Didn't he? Wasn't that also the super thick rubber suit where he couldn't actually turn his head? And so you kind of, whenever he turned his head, he couldn't turn his head to the side. He had to turn his entire like torso.
Yeah, so that invented the bat turn, which was used by a lot of other movie actors afterwards. So he did coin the bat turn, so I got to give him that. But I put him, he's tied in fourth with Will Arnett's Lego Batman. Very different take on the character.
Very different take, but it's hilarious though. And I do appreciate, because they make so many references to that, like those movies, they know Batman and they're kind of playing a joke off of what Batman actually is.
Well, it's so funny. The Lego movie version of Batman works on many levels. And one level, you can totally imagine this is just some little kid playing with Lego and he's like, "Oh, I'm Batman. Like Batman's cool and this is what Batman is."
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way the character is portrayed, when it's revealed at the end of the first Lego movie that it's this little kid playing with his toys, you're like, this is totally how some like 10-year-old would just have this impression of Batman who's really cool and does all this awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get into the Lego Batman movie, and that does a great job of showing the emotional insecurities of Batman. The fact that he is all alone and that he hasn't gotten over the fact that his parents passed away and that he does have this yearning for family. And like as I said when we reviewed that movie, that is the arc of Batman in the comics. He has to learn to deal with his pain by accepting the love of others, and that's how he ends up getting this huge Batman family of sidekicks and supporting characters.
Yeah, like Batgirl, Robin, Alfred, and who else did they have at the end when they're watching?
Certainly lots of other characters from the comics that enter Batman's world.
That one scene where he's sitting there and watching Jerry Maguire, and it's like, "You complete me," and he just bursts out laughing. Yes.
So, and then that even carries over into the Lego movie, the second part, because it shows the continued evolution of that character. So, yes, the Lego Batman is a much more comedic take, but it's silly and it's funny and it's representative of a child's view on Batman. But for me, I feel like they were able to capture like the heart of what the character is.
Agreed.
Someone who is trying to overcome his emotional trauma, and it's through bringing him together with other people. So
Can we agree that whoever put together those movies really understood Batman? Like, they have a thorough and deep understanding of Batman lore.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm looking at this now. I put Lego Batman as number 2.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
Ben the Movie Buff gave him a 7, which I think helped put him where he is.
And I put him at 3, right?
You put him at 4.
4. Okay, so, okay. All right.
So,
All right.
So a tie between two totally different versions of Batman. Michael
Right.
Keaton's 1989-92 Batman and Will Arnett's 2014, 2017, 2019 version.
Yeah.
So this is it. We're down to the final 3.
Okay.
So, and as we discuss each of these, it'll basically be a process of elimination to determine who's left. So, in third place, with 11 points, we have Adam West, who played Batman in 1966's Batman the Movie.
Oh, yes.
Whoever dehydrated those pirates could not have foreseen their accidental rehydration with the heavy water we use in recharging the atomic pile. You saw it yourself, Robin. The slightest impact was sufficient to instantly reduce them to antimatter. Let that be an object lesson in the dangers of tampering with the laws of Mother Nature.
So this film was released domestically and internationally as a way for the producers of the Batman television series to promote the show overseas. So they got all the best villains from the show, and they built new sets. They built the Bat-Copter, the Bat-Boat. They made this basically jumbo-sized episode of the TV show that involved the United... They couldn't call it the United Nations, so it's called the United World Organization.
Yeah.
And so they basically packaged this movie together and then put it in theaters here and around the world so that international audiences would get exposure to the Batman TV series. So I made a point of saying we're only talking about the movie versions of Batman. So the Adam West Batman did indeed appear in a movie. It was a feature-length film that was released at the end of the first season. So this was arguably when that show was in its prime. But for the sake of this conversation, we're focusing on the movie itself. So even though Adam West has played Batman in 3 seasons of television and other appearances here and there, may he rest in peace. I mean, there's other actors on this list who have passed away as well, particularly the ones from the 40s. But anyway, Adam West. So have you watched Batman the movie?
You know what? We actually did when I was growing up. And I know I said earlier, I think Val Kilmer was my first exposure to Batman. I take that back. I think it was actually Adam West in this movie. And the reason for that is I remember my brothers knowing that it was going to be on TV, and they recorded it. And I think I taped over that recording, so they were very upset with me. But we still watched that movie. So I know this movie quite well. Or not quite well. I remember like the first opening scene with the Bat-Copter and the shark biting Adam West's leg. And then what does he have in his pocket but shark repellent?
Well, no, it was in the copter, and Robin had to bring it down.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got that wrong. Sorry, I thought No, it was in one of the episodes. He actually uses shark repellent more than once.
Okay.
Because he does get in the surf contest with the Joker at one point, and he happens to have shark repellent in his utility belt.
Of course he does.
I remember that I'm pretty certain that happened in the series. Correct me.
No, it happened in season 3. I know that for sure.
Okay, it did, eh?
The TV series had a habit of doing 2-parters, and the show would air twice a week.
Yeah.
So the first part would always end on a cliffhanger, and then they'd say same bat time, same bat channel. And then it would bring you to the next day when it would air. So in the 3rd season, though, the ratings were going down, so they moved towards more individual stories.
Okay.
Like the surfing. But anyway, back to the movie.
Nice job. That's some digging into some Bat trivia right there.
Well, here's some more Bat trivia. Because the show was produced by Fox, and then Warner Brothers ended up buying DC Comics in the 70s. This show, like the TV series, was in limbo for a very long time, and it wasn't until 5 years ago that actually got released on home video. So for a long time, the only access that people could get publicly to the Adam West TV show was copies of this movie. Because this was a movie and it was produced entirely by Fox, they were able to release it on home video, and it was one of the first DVDs I ever got.
Okay.
So, and people could air it on TV. So it was, for a lot of people, for decades actually, it was like the only exposure they could have to the Adam West series.
Interesting. How the heck did I ever watch a TV show at some point?
there were certain channels that had access to running it, like TV Land.
Okay.
In fact, my parents actually paid for TV Land for a few years so that I could watch the 60s show.
Shut up, really?
Yeah, when I was in high school. I was
That's hilarious.
Yeah, they paid for they had one extra channel.
You have some wonderful parents who would do just that for you. That's very kind of them.
So yes, the Adam West Batman is from the 60s series, and the way that the movie plays out is just basically a longer episode of the show. So if you watch that movie, you basically get a flavor of everything that was the Batman 1960s TV series.
Cesar Romero with a mustache that's painted white. And,
Yep. But we're focusing on Batman, so
yep.
There is a single reference to the fact that Bruce Wayne's parents died in the first episode of the TV series, and that's never mentioned again.
Yeah, it's a little too dark for that.
In fact, like even characters like Two-Face weren't allowed to be on the show because they were deemed too gruesome.
Really?
So this is a Batman, as we see him in this movie, he's very, I would say, a good standing citizen.
Yes.
Like Batman and Robin in this series and in this movie are deputized agents of the law.
Yeah.
They're not vigilantes. And this was, again, representative of that time in the comics when there was a big push to support
the nation.
The government, and all this stuff. So a lot of the superheroes who were still around got deputized. So it was evocative of the time. And the show is very campy. It's very silly. It's very goofy. Some of the costumes look really cheesy and cheap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My one friend tells me they use this filming technique called the Dutch tilt-a-lot, where
yes,
the camera's just off-center.
To kind of gives you a little bit of a feeling of unease. Yes, yeah. They do use a lot of Dutch angles.
Yeah, so the movie, to me, represents everything that's great about that Adam West Batman. He's corny and just kind of like, I don't know, like that uncle, I guess, you have that's like a good standing citizen and is there to remind you of everything that's important and healthy. And
but see, that's sometimes what I want out of my superheroes. Like I want somebody to look up to and to aspire to be. And sometimes I want that to be my Batman. I want to have this secret other life where I'm just doing good on the side and I'm just happy about it and I don't have like these other problems to work out.
To be fair, that's the exact reason we critiqued George Clooney's Batman for not having any of the drama and the darkness of Batman. So it's interesting that we're so fond of Adam West's Batman for portraying the same. I think he just did it better. Like the writing was more clever, and I think because the show had the aesthetic of looking silly and the movie kind of followed this as well, that we're able to accept it as a comedy. There are fans of Batman who like grew up in the 80s reading like the more serious comics that like totally like spit on this TV series and this movie, and they want nothing to do with the Adam West Batman because it's not their Batman.
Yeah.
Like the Michael Keaton Batman is
Would
their
be there.
Batman.
Yeah.
And you put this Batman next to Michael Keaton or Ben Affleck, and you'd be very hard pressed to find ways in which they're the same character.
You couldn't. But this is actually, my understanding, it's a true to form representation of Batman from that era, like the comics. This is not far off from the comics at that time, was it?
No. By the time the show had started and by the time this movie came out, the comics were starting to move towards more serious again. But for the entirety of the 1950s and the first half of the 1960s, Batman was a very goofy, silly character where all kinds of weird stuff happened. If you ever want to like see more of what Batman looked like at this time, I would watch the series Batman the Brave and the Bold, because that's an animated series that is totally campy and knee deep into those Silver Age 1950s, 1960s concepts.
Yeah, I got to watch a little bit more of that show.
But anyway, Adam West Batman, I ranked him as number 5. So
number 5, okay.
And you put him as number 3.
Yep.
And so did Ben the Movie Buff. So he's here in 3rd place, and he's just a wholesome, like he doesn't even have to be Batman. He's just like I guess classic superhero, if that makes sense. Like there's I think the most famous scene involving him in the movie that he has a bomb that's going to explode, and he's like at this pier, and he's like literally running around with it over his head, and he's trying to find a way to dispose the bomb, but he keeps running into people, and then he comes across like a group of ducks, and he has the very he has the famous line, "Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb." And the joke is that he cares so much about people and animals that he's willing to almost sacrifice his own life for the sake of others.
Yes.
Which, again, puts him in a very stark contrast with some of the other Batmen who openly commit murder.
Yes, who don't really care about the lives of others.
And, of course, this Batman is one of the only Batman on this list who actually interacts with the Robin, and they have, like, the whole good old chum kind of
relationship.
Well,
I mean, some of them, like, a lot of them have a Robin in it.
Well, like the 40 serials had a Robin, Val Kilmer had a Robin, George Clooney had a Robin. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm wrong about that. Most of these Batmen had a Robin.
Yeah, but this one where it's a little bit more chummy, and you could see yourself in that role of like, man, there's Batman. I could see myself as Robin going alongside with him.
So while the Batman that I prefer is not the campy, jokey, silly one,
You like the broody, angsty one.
I'm able to enjoy
Emo Batman. I'm just kidding.
I'm able to enjoy the Adam West Batman.
Yeah, for what it is. It's a cultural artifact. I mean, we're never going to get a Batman like that again in live action, I don't think.
No, and I mentioned before, like the three different dimensions of the character. Really, this was a more simplified take. You had Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Like you didn't get it. You got the sense that Bruce Wayne was indeed the billionaire playboy that he pretended to be. That wasn't an act he was putting on.
Mm-hmm.
And that Batman was Batman. Like,
yep.
Personality wise, like they weren't actually all that different. So it's actually surprising people didn't like make the connection more.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the painted on eyebrows, I love. Oh my gosh.
Those are there. And like to be fair, his costume is indeed comics accurate, right down to the tights.
Yep.
So
when you see it on screen, it just looks ridiculous because his belt is all the way up to his belly button, and it is. Adam West does not have a physique, like he does not have muscles.
Yeah, but in the same way as the 40s guys, there's a lot of scenes of them just punching up a bunch of goons, and you feel like they're working hard trying to, not only are they doing the detective work to try and solve the puzzles and the crimes, but they're also just doing a lot of punching and kicking.
Mm-hmm.
So I certainly felt that Adam West Batman did a lot of hard work and really leaned into the detective element of Batman, which not a lot of these portrayals do.
Mm-hmm.
Batman is supposed to be like the greatest detective in DC Comics,
mm-hmm.
and really the Adam West is one of the only versions, I should say, that actually dives into that part of the character.
Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, that's true. Okay. I hadn't thought of that.
All right, so now in second place.
Okay. Can I guess?
Yeah, so this person in second place has 8 points.
8 points. Okay. Ben the movie buff, you, me. I'm going to put... Yeah, it's Kevin Conroy, isn't it?
Yep, so in second place with 8 points, we have Kevin Conroy.
Who is an excellent actor. Let's be honest. This is well-deserved for him to get number 2. I think this is a 1A, 1B for who's last here, but...
So Kevin Conroy has been mentioned at least once on this podcast before, but he is a voice actor who's played Batman in a lot of different iterations, most famously in Batman the Animated Series, which, of course, is a TV show. We're ranking movie Batman today, and we're ranking movies that got a theatrical release. So most of the movies that he's been in are direct-to-video or got like a one-night showing in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
But one film he did got a theatrical release. So today we're talking about Kevin Conroy's portrayal of Batman and Bruce Wayne in 1993's Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay.
I don't want to let you down, honest, but it just doesn't hurt so bad anymore. You can understand that, can't you? Look, I can give money to the city. They can hire more cops. Let someone else take the risk. But it's different now. Please. I need it to be different now. I know I made a promise, but I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy.
I do believe I've seen this movie. I was just ranking Kevin Conroy based on all of his other work as Batman.
Well, we're ranking movie Batmans and ones that got theatrical releases. So
remind me the plot of Mask of the Phantasm.
So in Mask of the Phantasm, there's this new criminal called the Phantasm who kind of looks like Batman, and he's killing off mobsters.
Okay.
And Batman has to solve the mystery of who this Phantasm is. At the same time, a former love interest returns to Gotham City, which causes Bruce to essentially reflect on his origins and how he became Batman.
Okay.
Does that ring a bell?
Unfortunately not, so I don't know if my ranking counts, but I'm still sticking with it.
Yeah, so like Adam West, most of Kevin Conroy's work as Batman exists on the small screen.
Yeah.
But we're ranking big screen versions, and luckily there was one film Kevin Conroy was in that got a theatrical release. So I actually ranked him as number 1.
Yep.
We talked earlier about how like our first Batman was really the one that we were probably most attached to, and for me, I was first introduced to Batman through the animated series, and I grew up with all the other shows that he was in. But we are indeed talking about movies, so I will say this: Mask of the Phantasm is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
it's the best Batman movie, the best representation of the character.
It has detective work in it, apparently. Probably has some good fight scenes. Probably has some good acting. Probably has it all.
Yeah, and you really see the different faces of Bruce the playboy, Bruce the guy in the chair, and Batman out in the field. And it tells part of his story, like his origin story, if you will. It shows him like when he's first gotten back to Gotham City, which we see in other movies. But what's fascinating is in this version of the story, you see him fall in love, and he's at a point where he pretty much realizes that he doesn't have to be Batman anymore, or that he doesn't have to pursue this vendetta anymore. There's this excellent scene of him in a graveyard while it's raining, and he's at his parents' grave, and he's basically begging them to let him stop.
Really?
He's like openly saying it doesn't hurt so much anymore.
Really?
And he's like asking for his dead parents' permission to be happy.
How does that movie end? How does he keep on?
I don't want to spoil it for you guys.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
All I have to say, that movie contains some of the best moments for the character. And I know I'm biased because, again, it was the first version I was introduced to, but in terms of portraying the different elements of Batman's character, allowing... And again, with the animation, you can get away with the character looking however you want. So Kevin Conroy doesn't have to worry about looking the part.
He's just jacked and everything.
Yeah, they can draw him however they want, which I admit gives them an unfair advantage over the film actors. But it just allows them to go places they can't go in live action with how the character moves and how he moves in the shadows and whatnot. And I just think it has all the elements there. It's the definitive, for me anyway, the definitive version of Batman.
Well, I need to go and watch this movie because I'm feeling like I'm really at a cultural disadvantage for never having seen this movie.
Yeah, it is the best Batman movie there is.
Wow, I am sad that I have not seen it.
And with his voice, like you can hear an audible difference between what his Bruce Wayne and what his Batman sound like, and what his Bruce sounds like. When he's just sitting there in the chair, he sounds a certain way. When he's at a party, he sounds a certain way.
He has a lighter tone to his voice when he's not Batman.
Yeah.
He's got the gravely sort of like brooding voice when he is Batman. And when he's Bruce Wayne, he's actually quite light and happy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imitate it because it's that good.
Yeah, I know. Well, Kevin Conroy's an excellent voice actor.
Yeah, so... As a movie version of Batman, like unfortunately this film didn't do very well at the box office. It opened on Christmas Day in '93 and basically became a flop. So it was the last animated film starring Batman to get a theatrical release until the Lego Batman movie. So all to say, I think this is the best version of Batman there is. It portrays all the elements of the character. The character looks good. It does all the right things, and it shows you emotional depth and complexity of the character that you don't even see in some of the live action versions. So
true enough. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I need to go see this movie. I wish I could offer more for our listeners just to chime in on this version of Batman, but I will take Average Joe's recommendation on this one.
Well, basically everything that you would like about him from the animated series is represented in here.
Okay.
Because in the same way that the 66 movie is everything that is great and bad about the 60s TV show, everything that's great about the animated series is represented in Mask of the Phantasm.
Right.
So, before we give out the final name, let's just go through the ranking one more time.
Okay.
All right, in dead last, in 8th place, we have Robert Lowry with 29 points from the 1949 movie serial. In 7th place, we have a tie for 26 points, both Lewis Wilson from the 1943 movie serial and George Clooney from 1997's Batman and Robin. In 6th place, with 18 points, we have Val Kilmer from 1995's Batman Forever. They really missed a beat there, giving the third film Forever. They should have saved that for the next one. But
I know.
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity, indeed.
In 5th place, with 15 points, we have Ben Affleck from the DC Extended Universe, spanning his appearances in 2016 and 2017. Tied in 4th place, we have Will Arnett as Lego Batman from 2014 to 2019, and Michael Keaton from 1989 to 1992. In 3rd place with 11 points, we have Adam West from the 1966 movie Batman the Movie. In second place, with 8 points, we have Kevin Conroy from 1993's Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And finally, in first place, with a whole 6 points, Christian Bale from the Dark Knight trilogy, which, of course, spanned from 2005 to 2012.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
You'll be in a padded cell forever.
Maybe we could share one. You know, they'll be doubling up the rate this city's inhabitants are losing their minds.
This city just showed you that it's full of people ready to believe in good.
I actually, for context, I actually put Bale as number 4.
Whoa!
I put Adam West, Kevin Conroy, and Ben Affleck above Christian Bale.
And you put, wow, okay, you didn't put Will Arnett above that? Oh, okay.
No, sorry, I did. Yeah, it was Will Arnett, Adam West, and
Kevin Conroy.
No, it wasn't Adam West. I put Ben Affleck, Will Arnett, and Kevin Conroy above Christian Bale. Wow. But both you and Ben the Movie Buff put him as number 1.
And so, okay, that's why he got the number 1 spot.
Yeah.
And you know what? I have to disagree with you here, AJ. You know what? This man, even though he wasn't my first Batman, he's my favorite Batman. Clearly, because of where I put him. But also, it's just that good of a movie series. It might not be exactly true to the character. I know that they created a more realistic world, but it's just in terms of the reach and in terms of the emotional complexity, in terms of the mind games that are played in these movies, so good. Now, mind you, it did peak in the second movie with the Dark Knight Returns, but
The Dark Knight.
Or The Dark Knight, sorry, yeah.
We've done an episode on the Dark Knight trilogy. It was one of our earlier episodes. So for those who are relatively new, I'll repeat what I said there. There are elements of the Christian Bale version of Batman that I just can't get on board with. For one thing, that voice.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. He talks like this.
Yeah, okay, it's a
It is the
voice.
most ridiculous thing
Yes.
I've ever seen in any motion picture.
Okay, yeah, it's the voice.
Where the drug is going.
Like, how did nobody on set just burst out laughing every time he opened his mouth?
Yeah, it's silly, but holy crap, the Joker in those movies. I know, okay, we're looking at Batman, but also Christian Bale, he kind of does a really good badass impression. Like you get the feeling that this man is laser focused on his mission and will do anything
until the
for
final movie
mission.
when he just gives up.
When does he give up in the final movie?
So at the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises, we find out he hasn't been active for 8 years.
Oh, that, yes. Well, that's
and then at
because
the end of the movie, he basically passes it off to the next guy.
But that was a responsible thing that he did.
But it's not Batman. Batman is the one we talked about from Batman Beyond, who keeps going at it until he literally betrays his virtues and has to force himself to give up. This is a Batman who's totally content with just passing on his responsibility to somebody else.
But at the end of the second movie, he had to kind of step back.
He didn't have to stop being Batman.
Well, he didn't have to stop being Batman, but he stepped back from people thinking that he was a good character. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do. But then he poisoned that heroic act by retreating and hiding in his house for 8 years and being all upset about Rachel dying.
But he stepped back. Well, I mean, the love of his life did die, so I get that. But also, he had injuries from his time as Batman.
They wrote that in so that they could justify his hiding in it. The Dark Knight Rises shows that all he has to do is get a super brace and he's fine.
Yeah, that was a little bit cheap in the way that they brought it in. But it's still there's much more.
They wanted to do the Dark Knight Returns story from the 80s where a Batman in his mid-50s comes back out of retirement and it's a great him having to cut back into the action.
Yeah.
They wanted to do it there, and Zack Snyder wanted to do the same thing with his Batman. So there's like they've tried
it.
They've tried multiple times to force this.
Christian Bale does a little bit. Now, admittedly, The Dark Knight Returns is not the strongest one of that trilogy.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises? Okay, what is it? Okay, it goes
Batman Begins.
Batman Begins.
The Dark Knight.
Dark Knight. Okay, yeah.
And The Dark Knight Rises.
Sure. I just know them as 1, 2, 3 in my mind. Anyways, yeah. So in Dark Knight Rises, it's the weakest. I think it's the weakest of that trilogy, but it's still a darn good movie. And so yeah, like the script is lacking a little bit there, but Christian Bale in The Dark Knight, holy crap, that's a good movie.
Okay, but again,
and it's not just the voice.
You keep talking about the movies, but we got to focus in on the interpretation of the character.
And the interpretation of the character, he's playing a billionaire who kind of looks self-interested. And it's like, oh, you have your own safe room. Oh, let us come in with you. And then he closes the door behind him, and the people are left with the Joker, and they think he's just being a dick. Where in reality, he's saving them.
Yeah. So absolutely, like I've talked about the three faces of Batman.
Yeah.
Christian Bale does a good job of conveying each of those.
Mm-hmm.
Batman voice aside.
Yes.
If you overdub him with Kevin Conroy, got one of the perfect Batmans out there.
Mm-hmm.
But the voice, and that's the thing, when you have people like Kevin Conroy who demonstrate how to do a good Batman voice, and then you've got
yeah,
it just looks ridiculous.
It's just that one. Okay, fair enough. It's just that one element, but like the in the shadows, he does the in the shadows good. Where in that first movie, he's fighting the bad guys, and the guys running around afraid. It's like, where are you? Here.
Yeah, absolutely. Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, great interpretation of the character, stupid voice aside.
Yeah.
I mean, they remove some of the mystique of the character by explaining like how he does all his stuff, which makes him a little less interesting to me because like then I it's like, oh, how does he sneak away? Oh, I know how, because he got this certain ninja training. Or
yeah,
how does he do this or that? Oh, because he got this ninja training. And that's another thing too. Batman Begins kind of betrays the best part of his origin story, is that where he traveled from place to place around the world to develop the skill set he needed to become Batman. And this film, to just make it simpler, I guess, he just goes to the one place, and it's like Walmart for how to become a crime fighter.
Mm-hmm.
So it cheapens for me a bit of the resolve, I guess, or like the journey of the character.
And the other thing I will admit, just having Lucius Fox as your tech guy, kind of like as a Q to 007, that cheapened the character a little bit for me. I always thought it was interesting that like Batman had all these toys. He developed them himself, but it makes him less of a character in that somebody else does it all for him.
Well, it's not unlike that in some of the best comics, or even in the animated series, where there are these different people who play a part in Bruce's life who help him out in different ways. So I won't fault the movies for that. But and that's the other thing too. This is another version where Bruce Wayne finds his parents' killer, and except in this case, he doesn't get to be the one who kills his parents.
Kills his parents' killer.
He doesn't. Yeah, sorry, he doesn't kill his parents' killer. Somebody else does, and so he goes on his crusade because he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Bruce Wayne who should just have gone to therapy and worked through his stuff. The best versions of Batman are the ones where he
doesn't know who his killer is. He knows his parents' killer is out there, and he's just doing what he can so that this never happens to anybody else ever again.
Yes.
Knowing that person may be out there, and hopefully he's going to get them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just not the version we get here. And like you said, Christopher Nolan is the director and writer or whatever, wanted to make it a more realistic version. So to give Batman a more, I suppose, like real world origin, to make him less unrealistic, they went that way. And for Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, I was able to buy it, but then I feel they really betrayed the character in The Dark Knight Rises with the first thing of him taking off the 8 years. Just because of public perception, injuring his leg, which, as we found out, he could just fix right away anyway.
If he had the interest to get back into it, he could have done it. But there wasn't the need for the Batman at that point because they had passed enough laws so that they could clean up the city. They explained that at the end of the second movie.
Yeah, but then there's the point of Batman is that he's so obsessed with his mission that he's just going to keep going, and so the fact that he would retreat from all contact with people, it makes it more like the Michael Keaton Batman who only lives to be Batman.
But it's consistent with his character in that he wants to, like the way that he was set up in it's okay. The overall arc of the story is he's trying to clean up the city. That's what he wants to do. And then by the end of the second movie, they get there because of the Harvey Dent law, right? Yeah. And then they were able to clean up the city because of the Harvey Dent law. And then all of that gets screwed over because of Bane and everything and it all getting out there. Okay, cool. But I think the reason he takes off that time is because the Harvey Dent law allows them to clean up the city, so he doesn't have to be out there cleaning up the city. Now, his motivations are a little bit different, though, because his origin story is a little bit different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I still feel like Batman would be out there just being Batman. Like, you're never going to get crime down to absolute zero, so there would still be... and that's the thing, like, in that universe, I guess there's only a handful of Batman villains. I guess there's only those 3 or 4 villains. There's none of the other ones that would allow him to actually be Batman for stuff.
Well, they don't have the supernatural villains, do they?
You don't need the supernatural villains. You could have easily done more Riddlers or Penguins or Black Masks. Like, you could have done more characters like that. And then, like I said, the ultimate betrayal of the character for me is at the end when he basically just pieces out so that he can retire, and like he fakes his death, fakes a martyr's death, and then basically passes it off to not Jonathan Taylor Thomas, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt to continue. And I'm like, that is, to me, and again, this is why I don't rank him as high as some of the others. To me, that is not Batman. That is some guy who is Batman-like.
Okay, but it's not Batman. But for me, the I think this is where our problem with me having just that one criteria and you having 3 different categories, it makes that difference a little bit more obvious. See, for me, this was the most enjoyable out of all of these. So that's why I enjoyed it the most.
You say that because you haven't watched Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay, fair enough. Good point. And I flippin' loved Batman the Animated Series. So I think I may, and I really like Art Deco, so much so that I think I might actually change my rankings. I'm not going to say that I will, but
that's too late. They're written in stone.
Written in stone, okay.
But it's okay, because at the end of the day, the way the rankings work out is that Christian Bale is the Batch-R podcast's #1 Batman, and while he certainly ticks off a lot of boxes, he has one of the best performances for sure of any Batman. He's had the most appearances in 3 full films. He does a lot of his own stunts in the movie, so the fighting style that he has, he actually worked with the stunt people on. So I can actually believe that he would have the physicality and the intensity. And like Michael Keaton, you can believe that this is a man who would do this really crazy thing. And you buy him in the 3 different faces of Batman, the 3 different dimensions of Batman. So all of that is good. There's just the things that I've already complained about with the character that keep
the voice not true to the source material. Yeah.
But those aren't as much of a problem for you.
No, you know what? It's the overall, the storytelling. I really enjoyed the mind games that are played. I really enjoyed his interactions with the Joker and Harvey Dent and what's the guy in the first movie, the villain in the first movie?
Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, Ra's al Ghul. His interactions with him.
And don't forget the stupid another stupid voice of the
There's another stupid voice that is supposed to be what is it? Argentinian?
It's supposed to be South, because Bane is supposed to be South American. So.
Yeah, but okay, no.
It sounds more Scottish to me.
Yeah, he does, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then you got the 2 of them. Anyway. All right.
And then they have this big... that's the most unbelievable of all the movies, because they shut down the entire island.
Well, that's the thing from the comics, too.
Is it?
Yeah, there's a whole storyline called No Man's Land, where Gotham has a huge earthquake, and it's basically declared... it's been abandoned by the U.S. government.
Oh, seriously?
And so it goes on for 6 months in the comics, where basically the whole city is run by criminals and whatnot. So it's that sequence in The Dark Knight Rises was paying homage to that storyline.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, we're getting off topic. Point is, regardless of how I feel about it, Christian Bale is the Batch-R podcast #1 film version of Batman.
Heck yeah.
So there you go.
Sorry, I'm sorry. He's just that much better.
Heck yeah.
Take that, Kevin Conroy.
My heart.
Hired better co-hosts. This is your own fault.
So what do you guys think? Do you agree with our ranking of the Batman? Do you think that I'm right, or do you think Dr. What is right? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let us know. We'd love to hear from you, because once again, we have no mail.
Okay. Oh, darn. Well, we'll have to get somebody to write in.
Well, ideally they would just write in, but anyway, Dr. What, please remind the people how they can get a hold of us.
If you want to contact the show with a question or an idea for an episode, you can send us an email to
batcharpodcast@gmail.com.
You can tweet us at the Bat Cookie Jar.
We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, chum, SoundCloud, good buddy, or wherever you get your podcasts. Share our posts on Facebook and make sure to like our page, because we want everyone to join us inside the Bat Jar. That's good.
Yeah, so now it's time to go into the Bat Jar, find out what we're going to talk about next time. So, Dr. What, if you do the honors?
Hoorah.
Don't look.
I have to see that with the paper.
That's true, but you can stick your hand in without looking. It's the most common mistake people make when they're pulling things in the jar. They look in there, so then you can kind of see what some of the topics are.
I can't see the topic. Okay, this feels like a topic. I'm so excited about this one.
Oh, gosh.
I'm so excited about this one.
I still don't know what it is. He's hiding it from me.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, it's been far too long that this one's been sitting inside the bat jar.
Oh, no.
Oh, Average Joe.
No,
Average
please.
Joe.
What is this?
Do you want me to read it, or do you want to look at it?
Okay, I'm just not going to look, and you have to read it for me.
Battlestar Galactica.
Oh.
BSG. Yes.
Okay, well, I guess Ben the Movie Buff and I are going to be talking about Battlestar Galactica next week.
Oh, I'm looking forward to listening to this one. Have you seen the entire series?
I've seen none of it.
Oh, buddy, you're in for a treat. It's a good series.
Well, if it's anything like the Stargate shows, I enjoyed the episodes I watched, but I wasn't incentivized to keep watching. So
this is, I would say, magnitudes better than Stargate.
Okay.
Seriously,
wow.
Stargate is a little bit too campy, and you can kind of get lost in. There's just so much more quality in BSG.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll find out. So come back to the Batchar podcast next week when we talk about Battlestar Galactica,
and it's going to be epic.
So until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Dr. What.
Catch you on the flip side.
And come back if that looks infected.